So welcome back after the break. We are starting our third panel session. I hope that you already all have your headsets. Well, there are some that haven't, so you need to wait.
Więc jeszcze raz.
So once again, welcome to our third and last panel session, because yesterday, or rather tomorrow, we are going the meeting of the Parliament of Swoopford, evaluation meeting, the Parliament meetings, work in that way that everyone who comes becomes an MP and gets the rights to vote. So it's better for you to stay. But now we are at the third panel session. So you know that Joanna Kiliszek and myself, we divided the modules. I prepared the first panel session, so Joanna moderated it. Karsten organized the second module, or the panel session, and now Joanna organized the third panel session, and I'm moderating it. So it's local, global, international.
Nie chcę tutaj długo mówić.
I don't want to speak too much. I think that Joanna will introduce us into this topic. Joanna is a historian and critic of art, a curator as well. She curated, I can't exactly remember when, but in the Institutes of Polish Culture, both in Leipzig and in Berlin, and Adam Mickiewicz Institute in Warsaw. Today, she lives close to Berlin, and I'm very happy that together with her we were able to prepare this conference, because as we mentioned at the beginning, we met first during an online meeting on Zoom. We hadn't met beforehand, we've just heard of each other, and it's really fantastic that we were able to meet here for the second time face to face in reality, and it bore fruit in this very nice cooperation among Joanna, Karsten and myself. So Joanna Kiliszek, the floor is yours. So welcome everyone, also the new arriving guests. I would like to mention Joanna Klas, who is the artistic director of Warsaw City, and Wojtek Stasiarz, but also Stefan Strux, the theater director, who has been involved in global projects when globality was yet an unknown topic. So it's not an incident, it's not an accident that, it's not a chance, sorry, that this conference is taking place in Słubice and Frankfurt by a different year. I've been already identifying in this New America concept. So this concept of creating the thread of understanding and I don't like this statement about building bridges, because I've been hearing about that for so many years and it has never related. So I'm more about people getting connected and creating a positive change for the future for others. So what else can we learn while we look into the eyes of other cultures? So this is what this panel session is going to be about. So a week ago we had a very touching event and 3 women were its protagonists. They come from Africa. Traditionally, at the largest book fairs in Frankfurt am Main, there are awards for writers. So this year it went to Tsitsi Dangarenka. For the 12th time it went to a woman from Zimbabwe, an activist. So the Frankfurt am Main, there was also Miriam Mann who spoke, a spokesperson for multiculturality, who clearly opposed racism and allowing clearly right-wing publications to the fairs, and the audience was terrified. And her friend and half-sister of Barack Obama, she said, it doesn't matter how difficult it is, but in a difficult country you have the time to see yourself because others perceive you in a different way. So you have time to ask yourself the question, who am I? Because others try to define you. So let's treat the meeting today as an attempt to have an insight inside you, not ourselves, not only in art, but also into people who are somehow related to art. So Tsitsi Dangarenka, she said, let me quote it, what we can do is to change our thinking patterns, thought patterns, word by word, consciously and consistently, and stick to that until we see results in the way we do things. And so what consequences are there out of that? She went even further. So being from a different country, different culture, she told about a philosopher from 300 years ago. It's about Confucius. And she told us about this notion, I'm thinking, so I am, so hence I am. But she suggested to go even farther and say that the beginnings of this very known maxim are slightly different. I doubt, so I think, so I am. So these doubts are one of major driving forces that create new ideas. And she said something more. She also added one more buzzword, I am because you are. And this is perhaps the summary of what we would like to discuss today in a Swoopford German-Polish international constellation. But before we move on to discussing discourse in locality, globality, and internationality. So here you can see Tsitsi Dangarenka and Alma Obama. So, as Zygmunt Bauman mentioned, if we bring Europe to one term and one understanding, that would mean hospitality. Today, the Kantian thought about the civil right and the global friendship. She notices a basic truth that the earth is round. It's a sphere. So she says, as a consequence, that people won't be able to spread without stop. Eventually, they'll need to start bearing each other. So they will be forced to live in a neighborhood and in a society. So the civic community is required. So this culture and ethics of hospitality are very important because, let me quote here, hospitality is a culture in itself. It's not just a different kind of ethics. Ethics is hospitality, end of quote, Deridian. So the hospitality is the largest, the most important distinctive feature of humanity. So in Poland, in Polish word, hospitality has a slightly different dimension than in Germany. The guest, and Fremd being different. It's not guest friendship. So it refers to the situation that we have now at the border of Belarus and Poland, and we've also saw what happens at here in Sopot, and this notion of Omacht, impotency. So in 1937 we had the first book from Erich Fromm, and in the 36th second Erich Fromm, who already then lived in the US at the immigration. He wrote his study about the feeling of impotence. That's powerlessness. It was inspired by this feeling that prevailed in Europe 1 year before Austria was annexed and before the war broke out, and long before Jews started to be persecuted. Even if German so this powerlessness of a German Jew and psychoanalyst of Marxist psychoanalyst. In 1936, a Polish sociologist and the historian of art Stefan Czarnowski wrote an acutely up-to-date essay of frustration and powerlessness in people who were faces power violence emerges. So there is also this note of hope that future can be somehow created. The third notion I'd like to introduce here is the reflection praxis, that is some kind of a hope. Coming back to the previous, while we talk about powerlessness, I want to refer to the second part, power. The strength, power, which we can find in powerlessness to change it somehow. So we need to leave, quit our own shadow. So coming back to reflexive thought, we have John Dewey here. In his book, How Do We Think? From 1910 and 1933, he described reflection as a process. He defined reflexive thought as active, persistent analysis of all beliefs or seeming form of all conclusions to which we get. So these may be suggestions that may lead to a possible solution of the problem, rationalization of the problem, this process that leads us to rationalizing the problem, and then using suggestion to collect factual material, psychological development of ideas, and last but not all, testing the hypothesis by clear or imagined way. So summing up, this notion means constant and critical analysis. So reflection on different notions and theories is based on developed and well-checked entities. This method can be the most important source of self-development and self-improvement. By combining praxis and theory through reflection, a person who can reflect it in its praxis can look back to its praxis and analyze its actions, thoughts and reactions, and through that adds to his present state of knowledge to achieve a higher level of understanding. To sum up, a focal point of developing the reflexing theory was to develop these acquired experiences. So reflexive praxis is a process of constant learning. It's used by professionals in different areas to increase the ability to take informed and conscious ideas. Decisions. So anxiety raises basic questions. Which will stay after we disappear? In the book, The Future is a Foreign Country. So David Lanter, the researcher of heritage, analyzes of constantly changing the role of the past in shaping our present life. All generations change the heritage they get according to their needs. This is why we pick what fits us, which are relevant to the present state, the elements from the past, relevant elements from the past. So according to which criteria and why do we choose what we choose? Lewenthal and the previously mentioned Bauman describe critically the contemporary cult of distance and this constant development, meaning utopia and conservative outlook. So the conclusions for today are rather fatalistic because they foretell disappearance of common values, common systems and language that we are able to understand, that we are all able to understand. We know how damaging consequences can be for our civilizational problems. We are just before the catastrophe, but we don't want to see that because we live here and now in the current era of individualism and egoism. So we don't value long-term reflection, but this disappearing existentialism. However, the history of culture and civilization is based on cycles and it has a form of a hermeneutical circle. So referring to hermeneutical ideas of Ricoeur and Hans Georg Gadamer, but first of all the continuity of culture as one of major universal values. According to hermeneutism, it's in the field of arts, in the community and participation in tradition, what manifests are the basic dimensions of human and aesthetic experience. A conscious selection of threads from the past and the feelings of link between the past and the present and search of contemporary interpretation what we have now indicates the path of continuity in culture. So I wanted to refer briefly to a unique European institutional project, that is institutional programming of the European Union on cultural heritage and global changes. This program, this strategy, has been undergoing constant updates. It was initiated in 2009. And the starting point was the awareness of threats towards the European cultural heritage resulting from the processes such as aging, tourism, global tourism, vandalism and terrorism, and pollution and so on. So this initiative is based on innovative and collaborative research of European cultural heritage. They aim at making smooth and coordinating research programs to be able to effectively and efficiently create a vulnerability, complexity of arts, So there are 17 EU states and 8 associated states involved in that, and simultaneously I'm saying that to correspond, that includes 17 sustainable growth objectives. So they refer to 3 dimensions of our existence. And heritage as well, material heritage and intangible and digital heritage, and I think that the 3 aspects are very important here. So I'm leaving you here with these questions. When I tell you about these 3 notions that are important for me: hospitality, powerlessness, and reflexive practice, with the question, what should we keep for next generations, and how we should make our choices for the future. Thank you.
Nie wiem jak to zrobić.
Nie mam. Czy ja dostałem jakąś prezentację? Nie ma, nie? Okej.
Przepraszam, bo...
Apologies. Multitasking is not always easy. All right, thank you very much, Joanna. Thank you for this comprehensive presentation, an introduction to the topic. I had several ideas. Je suis un autre. I am somebody else. A famous quote that comes to mind when we think about the guest other. It's a dialectical question. When we think about and talk about ourselves, we automatically assume that there is another, and we close off. And what we are trying to achieve is to see that we are all other, and we are others, and as others we can become a community and become an us without falling into the traps of this dialectics.